Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. Breaking Glass Pictures has announced the release of the multi-award winning new comedy drama, Give or Take. It is a funny and heartfelt film about love, loss, acceptance, and what it truly means to be home. The film opens theatrically on February 11th in Los Angeles, Boston, New York, Cape Cod, and more. And it will arrive on DVD and digital platforms on February 22nd. And my guest is one of the stars from the film. He plays the role of Ted. He is one of Broadway's favorites. He's a two-time Tony Award winner. Please say hello to my friend, Norbert Leo Butz. How are you?
I'm well, Richard. How are you?
It is great to see you. You look sensational. Where are you and how are you?
I am very well. I'm in my basement studio. This is my man cave in Jersey. My daughter runs an esthetician service out of half of my office. So this is where the magic happens. I have my piano here and my guitars, and I've spent so much of the past 2 years down here.
Well, I want to talk to you about that. Have you been able to put the past 2 years or so into some kind of perspective?
I mean, it's an ongoing story. We're not. I don't feel like through the looking glass yet. But it was, yeah. Richard, I'll be honest with you. It was the pandemic for me was. I was employed almost throughout. I was lucky to have a couple of television jobs. The good news was that I was able to stay employed. The bad news is that I was separated from my wife and my kids for much of 2020 while I was working in Canada and wasn't able to cross the border. So that was a really, really difficult time. You know, half of your mind is so grateful that you have a gig, and then the other half is just like, get me out of here. It was such a difficult place to be. And then another TV gig down in Georgia, and I finished that up just before the holidays. So I'm back home now after a good spell away. So it's great to be home.
Did you do a lot of yoga during this to sort of keep you sane or keep you as focused as you could be?
I did so much yoga, especially when I was in Canada, and I'm really good right now because I just, we all had to glom onto practices and routines to keep us, focused. And I did a ton of yoga up there. I'm like levitating now. I'm floating up and hanging from stuff and doing inversions. I'm pretty good right now. But yes, I do a lot of yoga.
I love this. I think that's fascinating. Yoga is something that calms me too, because
100%.
I got all that energy and I'm like, okay, I got to focus. Let me do some yoga.
Yep.
Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes worth before an interview, I was like, it
Totally.
just
I never
centers
miss a
you.
day. That and the piano and music has really always can drop me into a better place. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, congratulations on your latest film, Give or Take. I loved this film.
Thank you. That's so
Like I
sweet.
told you right before we went on, I watched it twice already. I cannot wait. And when I first got the screen, I was like, well, maybe I'll watch it in 2 parts. I was like, dinner's going to be late, Preston. I am not, I have to
Uh,
watch this straight through. It's such a beautiful movie. How did it come about for you, Norbert?
that's so sweet. I'm
Yeah.
so glad to hear that. Movies are strange. You have to do press and talk about them long after they wrap. And so I have to do a little bit of digging. I think Paul Riccio and Jamie Efros, the writers, I think they first presented me with a script. Man, I want to say back in like 2017 is the first time I got this script. And I didn't know the guys, and they said they had written it with me in mind, and that I was the only offer going out. I didn't know anything about them, but I loved the story and I loved the part, and I fell in love with it. And then I did My Fair Lady, and that put the we were starting to talk about when we could start shooting, and schedules got all fakakta because I went into My Fair Lady for that year and change, and then some money fell through, and then it was the little train that could, man. They just stuck with it, and we finally shot it 2019 in Cape Cod on a shoestring budget for over the course of, I think it was a 21-day shoot, like a lot of low budgets are, and had the most wonderful time. Um, it's hard to remember it when you're doing a film, and this was a real script. A lot of pages to shoot, a lot of characters. Oh, shame on me.
That's all good. Mine'll probably ring next.
Shame on me for getting a spam call in the middle of a Richard Ridge interview. Ugh. I'm so disappointed in myself. What a rookie mistake. What a rookie.
My phone will ring. Get ready. My answering machine will pick it up. Preston's in the other room. I'm like, pick up that phone.
But it was a whirlwind. It was a cold whirlwind. We shot it in March and April on Cape Cod.
Ooh, that's not a good time to be on Cape Cod.
I hadn't been to Cape Cod before. And, what's that Mark Twain quote? I think he said the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in Minnesota. It was a little bit like that. We froze, and a lot of them were exteriors. But it was the type of environment where, because the budget was so small, man, everybody just rallied. Everybody had to put on their big boy, big girl pants and take care of themselves, bring some of their own wardrobe, and I actually love working in those kind of constraints. And that was my main memory of the film. I was like, oh my God, we're really doing this. Paul and Jamie were so great. There's so much to shoot, and we've got 21 days and no money and no budget. And so you get maybe 2 takes of a thing, you get maybe 3 takes. And so everybody's really on the front foot. Everybody's in it for the right reasons. If you were a diva, you just would not be paid attention to, and I think the film, it's got a hard scrabble kind of everyman kind of feel to it, and that's how we shot it too. So I'm really proud of it. Yeah, I haven't seen it though. I saw an early edit, but yeah. I'm really excited to see it. And I'll also say about Jamie and Paul, our writer directors, man, so they had finished the film, and then, like so many movies and so much content, the pandemic hit, and they had to sit on this thing. Their hands were tied. They had planned, big releases and everything got shelved, and they just kept on plugging away, getting it into the online film festivals. Everything was done, getting it seen, getting it reviewed, getting a distributor through Breaking Glass, which was a real coup for them. A lot of people make really beautiful, heartfelt movies, and they put their heart and soul and their retirements into them, and it's beautiful work, and nobody ever sees it because nobody ever gives it a platform. There's so many, especially, and how competitive it got with content.
Yeah.
On streaming services, and the fact that these guys just kept showing up, and I did the film, and I've tried to agree to show up to talk to people who are interested in talking about it, but it's really their champion. They are the Olympians here.
Well, Breaking Glass Pictures is a big deal because we have a lot of their DVDs already that Press and I have collected. They take these beautiful little movies,
don't they?
Yeah. It's a really great distribution company. So I'm really glad that, like I said, everything that was supposed to happen with this film, even through it all, like you said, the little train that kept going along, these 2 guys.
Yeah, and Breaking Glass kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it used to have a kind of a reputation of sort of like really low budget, scandal, sometimes like scandalous kind of gay stories and they've really expanded, right, to include individual real films. Do you know what I mean? Real films, modest films, but really good films.
It's been great to watch them over the years because we have some of their earlier films that they released and some of the newer ones. I'm like, boy, they've really stepped their game up. So talk about the role of Ted, what you love about him, and how do you describe the film?
Yeah. So Ted is sort of the antagonist of the film. The story centers around a young man in his 30s whose father has passed away after a short but deadly illness, and he has to come, and his mother's also gone, and so he's sort of found himself at this crossroads. He goes back to see to his father's things in his estate, and his dad had left his mom about a decade earlier, come out of the closet, identified as a gay man, and fell in love with this character that I play named Ted. And they create a life together, and they don't marry, but they become partners. So this the son of my recently deceased partner comes back, and it's a film about reckoning with death and grief and loss among two people who would normally not have anything to do with each other, who see each other maybe as threats, especially the son to my character. I related so much to the story, and I'll say it right at the top. Ted is obviously a gay man, and I identify as a straight male, cisgender. And I remembered when I read the script, after I had read it a few times, I said, "Oh, this is exactly the type of role that guys like me get flack about. That guys like me are being called to question." And I thought long and hard about it, and the reason that I did the part, it wasn't just that I loved the role. I really thought I was the guy for the part. I really thought I was the guy, because sexuality. Ted is somebody not grappling with his sexuality. He's not somebody who is tortured or at all about identifying as a gay man. It's who he is. He's as at peace with that as he is, his birth date or his social security number. It's just who he is. He's grappling with grief, with loss, with not being given the space or the respect to grieve his partner. And that's something that I really felt that I understood. And I also felt like I had a real front row seat to the dynamic. In my own life, I'm one of 11 kids, and I lost a brother when he was 46 and I was 42, I guess. And he had come out of the closet in midlife and left a marriage, and never left his kids. He was a wonderful, wonderful father, but fell in love with the man. And I watched, and then he subsequently was diagnosed with cancer. So the story felt really, really personal to me, and so I wanted to do it for those reasons. It's the part that every actor, it's what we look for in all parts. Somebody who takes a real journey in this week or this few days that the film takes place, a real beginning, middle, and end. The guy goes on a real spiritual journey in that, and that's what I'm always looking for in a part. Somebody who starts at A and ends up way further down the alphabet. Yeah.
It's what I love about the movie. It's so heartfelt. It pulls at your heartstrings in 1 second. 2 moments later, you're hysterically laughing. I
agree with you 100%. And I think I agree. It's really funny. I hope people don't think, oh, a death, it's not Bergman. It's not, it's really, really sweet in a way that doesn't make your teeth hurt.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do that. And I love it when a writer or a project can find that combination of sweet and good, open-hearted, but also earthy and grounded in reality. It's a hard balance to make, to make something about generous people, about kind people that doesn't make you want to throw up,
That's why I think Paul and Jamie did such a beautiful job.
I do too.
And that, you said, it's a very fine line to walk, and many writers can't do it because it just tips over into something else. And this is so beautiful because you feel for your character so much, and you feel for Martin, the son's character.
Completely. I put those guys up there with, other writers, people like, who've been able to, like Nora Ephron comes to mind, that type of voice that is hopeful, that's optimistic, but that's not lazy,
Yeah.
really makes the characters go through something real. Um, but they do lead with humor and hope. And I think great, that's a great group of people to spend a couple of hours with,
Yeah. Like you said, I love Cape Cod. I've spent like 30 years, Preston and I, going up to Cape Cod, starting
Wow.
in Orleans, where you did a lot of this, right?
Yep.
And I was like, when the movie started, I was like, oh, this is not summer. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Oh,
but then I'd see
it
Land
was
Ho.
beautiful. I mean,
Oh
don't
yeah,
get me wrong, Richard. It was gorgeous, and it was spring. So
yeah.
the dogwoods, right? The forsythia was all exploding up there. And I'm a gardening nerd. And that's the other thing that I could really feel with this character. It's like, okay, the only thing I don't have in common with this guy is who I sleep with.
Yeah.
Everything else was checked off in the boxes. And Ted is a landscaper and a gardener professionally. And I've always said, if I wasn't doing this, that's what I would be doing.
Okay, so it was one of the easiest scenes for you to film when you were planting those 3 yellow plants in the backyard?
Yes. I was even instructing them as to what type of mulch and uh, I do. I'm a gardening fanatic, even more so since the pandemic. Um, but it was beautiful. So don't get me wrong. But man, it was cold. I could never get warm. You
Oh
know.
no, I love the Cape, but like I said, we like the Cape in the summer, but I know a lot of people love the spring and the fall. I know people go up there all different times, but it
Yeah.
was nice to see, oh, the Coinomatic. When you were sitting in the parking lot, I had the fondest memories of
I hope
doing
you weren't.
laundry there.
I hope you weren't in the parking lot of the Coinomatic like Ted was, hungover after drinking 12.
No, but I remember going there at 2:30 in the morning, leaving the doors open to our car. It was a beautiful stars were in the sky, and we played Barbara Cook as we were washing our laundry because we were in P-Town and there was no laundry mats there, so you had to go to Orleans. And I just loved all the different
That's
things
a long drive to do laundry.
to do laundry. Well, I was up there for the summer, and I was like, we went to Orleans, but I loved all these places. I went to Lanto. I went to all these places that I'd look at all these places that you were at during this movie.
Yeah.
What was the most challenging scene for you to shoot in the movie?
Oh, everything, like I said, because of the time constraint, everything was a challenge in terms of not panicking because
Yeah.
you didn't have a whole lot of takes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're just joking about the cold, but scenes are difficult for different reasons. Sometimes something is very emotional and you're at it for hours, and that can be really exhausting. And there were definitely a couple of scenes like that. But the things that were the most challenging at the end of the film takes place in a little rowboat. It was like 44 degrees outside, which doesn't sound that cold, but when the wind is blowing and we're doubling it for summer, I'm in a short sleeve Bermuda shirt. I was really miserable that day. Like that was it. And it's challenging in a way. It's not hard. It was only a few lines. Um, but it's challenging mentally,
Yeah.
to be like, I'm freezing my ass off here. My lips are blue. I can't stop shaking. And when they say action, I have to be playing like it's a beautiful August afternoon. Can we cover up the purple on the lips, please? Can we? Let's slap some color into my face. The weather was challenging. I will say that. Yeah, that was the most
But
challenging part.
you can't tell, like I said, that
We did it.
those are such beautiful scenes being
Yep.
out there on the water. But I was like, oh, it must have been cold then, but you can't tell in any of your performances or anything.
Well, it's again, we were talking about if we were to do that scene, and I've been on television things or filmed with big budgets, and if it had a huge budget,
Yeah.
we actors would have been complaining. They would have had to spend $5,000-$10,000 on one of those tents with like a
Yeah.
heating system. Of course, they would have had to do. There was none of that. You just had to sit and get it done. And there's a beauty in that, right? There's like you have to do it that way. But I also think it's productive for good work. we get we get pampered sometimes. We get infantilized sometimes as actors on sets, and sometimes it's great to be just like, nope, throw them to the lions. You got to do this. We got to make this work. We got an hour of light, and this is the temperature, and we'll get you a coat between takes and some hand things. And
See, I love independent films. I spoke to Jenna Rollins, and we talked about those early films with John Cassavetes, and she was like, we would shoot a scene, John would run out of money, he would do some other film role that paid him money for, and we go back. But I love independent films.
I do too.
There's an openness to your performances in that. There's an honesty to these that, I just think they're so great. And this is such a beautiful film. Like I said, Paul and Jamie did such a beautiful job putting this whole thing together.
Thanks. I agree.
Well, I want to talk about a few other things. You have such a wonderful career. I was looking back, thinking about when I first met you and everything else, stage, screen, and television. I just want to mention a few of the highlights. Just tell me what comes to mind, a fun story or a fun memory or something like that. Broadway debuts are very special. Like The Music Man is opening. There are 21 Broadway debuts in this new production of The Music Man.
Beautiful.
And I thought, you made yours in Rent. How magical. What do you remember about your debut in Rent?
Wow.
I know it's taking you back, but
here, I should turn. Hold on one second. I'm going to grab a photo.
Okay.
Hold on. I have my wall behind me. This is Rent. This is a photo this is basically the second cast, right? So there's Marcy and I. Some of the original cast members had stepped into other roles, but yeah, man, this was a lifetime ago. And I feel like the luckiest actor in the world. I've told the story of how I got into Rent many, many times. People can read it. I basically arrived in New York and was seen at a showcase for a friend's thing, and Chris Buono was in the audience and got me to see Bernie Telsey, and the show had just opened on Broadway, and I was a really good fit for both Roger and Mark, and it was exactly the track they were looking for, somebody to cover both those guys, especially Adam Pascal. And that's exactly when I moved to New York. And I was a late bloomer. Like, I didn't move to New York until I was 28 years old. I was already married. I had taught professionally, I had acted professionally, but I was a musician, a guitarist, and so I had the skills. I just had the skills for that gig, and that's exactly when I landed in New York. So I didn't have like a long struggle story in New York. I had struggled all through my 20s around the country. I was in London for a while. I came to New York tail end of '96. I was here for less than 6 weeks and was playing the lead in a Broadway musical less than 8 weeks after I arrived in the city. I mean, craziness, right? Very fast.
Who did you go on for first? Which role?
Adam Pascal. And when I was in auditions, I guess I had 4 or 5 callbacks, and they happened right away, because I think as soon as Bernie heard me sing and I could play my own music, and I had the resume, and I had an MFA, I could fulfill the parts of the part. There was the cover was having problems, so Adam was really in need of a cover, like, immediately. So I didn't, at the time, I didn't know, but I was on a fast track. The producers came and saw me each one at a time. I think I did like 4 callbacks in a 2-week period. Got the job at the final callback, which is where Al Larson came to give his approval, and he got the approval. I was basically given the role in the room, and then it was an odd day too for a callback. It was like a Saturday evening. It was a weird time. I started rehearsals on Tuesday, and I went on Wednesday afternoon. I had 1 day. Now, mind you, in that callback process of those 5 weeks, it's like Bernie is still one of my best friends in this business. He really held my hand through that process. He was like, the interest in you is overwhelming. Be getting familiar with this music. This is what. So even though I had like a day and a half of put-ins to learn the blocking, I had been going to see the show, and I knew every note of that score because they made me sing it over and over. So even though I kind of didn't know where I was in space, I could shut my eyes and sing every song. And that's what happened. I met Daphne Rubin Vega kind of about 45 minutes before the curtain started on the first time we did that show together. I hadn't even met everybody properly, and they put me on, and then I became Adam's basically first cover. And after I had 15 or 20 performances of that role, they started putting me on his mark. So they used to call me the Lon Chaney of Rent. I covered all the white straight guys and went on all the time. I would even do Mark and Roger on the same day often. So those were very challenging times to be singing harmonies opposite myself that just a couple hours before I had been doing. That was very, very tricky, but I loved it.
Yeah.
So you asked me what Rent was like. It was everything to me, Richard. I got an agent because of Rent. I became, it was my introduction to the industry, and I got so much experience because I got to play so many roles, including the lead role often. And then they offered me the role full time when Adam left.
Yeah.
To be given a show like that, that original cast, if you remember, they hit that stage with such a sense of purpose, like beyond themselves, beyond ego, beyond that beautiful, ineffable thing that we all want. That was my first show, it was like a service they were doing. And I got to just kind of breathe the fumes of that work environment. So lucky. I loved it. And it also kicked my ass. I was already married, and I was a new father when I started doing Rent. And so it was also the first time where I was like, the longest I had ever done a play was 4 weeks in a regional theater. I did Rent for 1 year and 10 months with a baby. And oh, right, the voice is something that has to be taken care of. My body doesn't do everything at once. And so I learned everything on Rent. I feel super lucky that was my first show.
Wow. The Lon Chaney of Rent. I love that.
I loved it, man, too. I would dye my hair red for Mark, and then wash it out and do blonde spikes like 2 hours later. And
For the same day. I love that.
Because I had come up through doing a lot of regional theater, and repertory regional theater, where it is a different play every night.
Yeah.
So again, I was lucky. I had the right skill and the right skill set for that.
At the right time.
At the right time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You have won 2 Tony Awards for your show-stopping performances in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and Catch Me If You Can. You must have so many incredible memories. I mean, I was there for a lot of this with you. I mean, would you share a favorite memory from each of those shows?
Oh, gosh. Dirty Rotten.
Yeah.
So many amazing memories. I think here, John Lithgow remains one of my dearest and nearest. And again, how lucky I was that my first big starring original Broadway show, originating something, I was paired with somebody like that.
Yeah.
So John is really a huge part of it. And then not just that. And then Jonathan Pryce came in, if you remember. And so, who was also fantastic and I loved working with. And then I did the tour with Tom Hewitt, who's also fantastic. So I had these 3 wildly different, incredible scene partners. You hear stories of somebody comes and replaces and the original person just can't deal with the new person. Or again, I don't know if it's because of my background, and I'm used to change a lot, and I don't get super controlling about that kind of stuff. But legitimately, all 3 of those guys are princes and taught me so much. So that was a great experience. And then Catch Me If You Can was just that show was so special to me.
Yeah.
It was such a hard time in my life, and the part just allowed me a place to go every night to do what I love to do, instead of sitting at home, being miserable and drinking. It gave me somewhere to go every night after going through some really hard times, and just the gratitude of that. That cast became my family, walked me through some of the darkest days of my life. So I don't know, it's just a lot of gratitude.
Beautiful. You also created the role of Fiyero in the musical phenomenon known as Wicked. Now, I know you have wonderful stories, but what did that show mean to you personally?
Well, I don't know if you can see Ness. Can you see Nessa Rose over there on the
Oh,
wall?
yeah.
Where's my Nessa? That's Michelle Federer over there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. While those two lead diva witches were, doing their thing center stage, I was making out with the Wicked Witch of the East. The witch that was flying under the radar. That's the one I went for. My Wicked also just such an incredibly special time. My kids were like at the most delicious ages when I did Wicked. They were 3 and 5 years old, so those little girls really grew up backstage there and, watched Adina on that thing when they were like waving to her and she'd wink down at them. It was a magical time for my kids, and I fell in love with this incredible human and the Wicked was how, the whole second half of my life has opened up because of Wicked. And, I have a third daughter. And so, I it was a showmance that on paper should not have worked. And, as many of them don't. And I'm lucky.
Yeah. Did your little girls want to be one of the witches? Who did they want to be in Wicked? Because they'd be at the theater all the time. Did they be like, who they want to be?
Yeah, they were. My oldest definitely had a Glinda obsession. My middle girl, Maggie, she's the one who has the studio down here.
Yeah.
She was much more of an Elphaba. But, it's funny. I have 3 daughters and none of them are lean toward performance of any kind. My oldest daughter is a beautiful writer and she's a teacher professionally, but she's a beautiful writer, poet, songwriter. My 2 other girls are really athletic. They're really good athletes, and I was an athlete too. So that part of them, but
no interest.
No real interest. And I've always wondered if it was because I just dragged them from dressing room to dressing room to dressing room every weekend of their childhoods, to where they, so boring. Nobody wants to do what their parents do.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter remains to be seen. She is interested in acting, but she's really interested in karate and volleyball too. So
You never know. Usually out of 3, one of them later on says, you know what? I think I'm going to go into this business.
Who knows?
Or maybe she'll become a karate teacher.
Maybe she will. She's an advanced purple belt. She's just turned 11.
Wow.
She's kind of incredible. Yeah.
That's terrific. Well, you got to play Patty Chayefsky, Bob Fosse's best friend on the TV series, Fosse Verdon. I knew Gwen very well. I didn't know Bob Fosse very well. So for me, this was so magical to watch because Preston and I would sit there and I'd be like, that's so-and-so. That's Neil Simon's wife. This is this person. That's that person. I mean, how magical was it working on that show with Sam and Michelle?
So magical on many levels.
Yeah.
Sam and I've been friends for a long time, and I love him. We're really good friends. We met doing a film years ago called Better Living Through Chemistry, and we've just remained great friends. So I think when they were casting the role, I think Tommy Kail thought of me, but I think also I've always wondered, I should ask Sam if he was responsible for me being suggested for Patty Chayefsky. So just to hang out with those guys. But then I'll be totally honest with you. Again, it felt like one of those, who's pulling the strings here? Because when I auditioned for my undergraduate acting program, Webster University, in 1986, I was, I'm not from theater people. I had to do 2 monologues. I did Tom from Glass Menagerie, and I'm going through a book of writing, and I find a monologue from something called The Bachelor Party by Patty Chayefsky. And I just thought the name was cool. Yeah. I'm like, Patty Chayefsky, sort of, is he like Irish and Jewish or something like that? I we didn't have Google, we didn't have anything. And I didn't even read the whole play. I just did this piece, and I loved this piece. It was the vernacular was very, very real, and the dialogue really flowed. And I did this speech for several auditions, like through my college years, and then in graduate school, I think it's the first time I saw Network and was absolutely blown away. I'm like, who wrote this? And that's when I became aware of Paddy Chesky. And then I did go seek his other films, The Hospital. So this is back when I'm in my 20s. Marty, obviously. So I had this real connection to Paddy Chesky, but I still didn't even know what he looked like, really. I just thought of him, we couldn't YouTube his Oscar speech. So when this part came my way, man, it just felt like this great big circle. He was a writer that had always been on my radar. And then when I read Sam Wesson's amazing biography, and you find out about this beautiful friendship between Chayefsky and Bob Fosse, and Gwen and Paddy too, and how dear he was. Oh, it was fantastic. Reading about all of those, when you have daughters, they do tend to call in the middle of.
Are you done with the basement yet? I have to get down there. You done down there in your man cave?
Yeah. Reading about New York, these cultural and theatrical movers and shakers in the 50s and 60s and 70s, an amazing bit of history, and loved it. Absolutely.
Well, like I said, just watching.
Had a ball playing it.
Yeah.
The fat suit, not so much. Right. We patted him a little bit. I always want to. I'm patted in so many roles. I want to go. You guys know that I'm actually, like in pretty good shape. Yeah. But I had so much fun, and I tell you, watching Sam and Michelle, especially do you remember that 5th episode when we're all at that beach house and it's directed like we used to call it, August Osage Fosse, or Who's Afraid of Anne Reinking?
Totally.
It felt like one of those. It really felt like a play, and we worked on that solidly for a week and a half. We rehearsed it on set for a few days before, and that was such a bonding experience. But it felt like you were in the room with the ghosts of those people. And I know it translated to the viewers as well. But there were moments, especially when Michelle would start to sing, and especially as the light would grab her in a certain way, and you'd feel a chill from all the way up your spine, like a direct transference. It was an incredible experience.
It was brilliant. Like I said, for those audience members who may not know, it's Sam Rockwell, of course, who played Bob Fosse, Michelle Williams, who played Gwen Verdon, and watching you play Paddy Chayefsky, like I said, it was like just watch. I loved that show. I thought that was so great. I was like, can we have another season? They're like, well, Bob passes away. And I'm like, but it was really, really great. You should be you should be so proud of that. I could talk to you forever, but we're almost out of time. What do you hope audiences leave with after seeing this film?
Oh, I don't think this is a movie that audiences have to have their whole worlds turned upside down. Have just a little heart opening, just a little softening of the heart, just a little more open when they leave the theater. I think at the end of the day, I have so little control how things are received or not. And sometimes I think that we think that movies and films can, or plays can do more than they really can in terms of real, social change. It definitely can. But with this film, just a little bit more generosity when they look around people, a little bit more kindness. We never know what people are going through, and we all have to face death. We all have to lose the thing we can't imagine ever losing. We have to do that. And just being reminded of that in the most gentle, humorous way can leave you with a really nice feeling, a really organic buzz.
Well, like I said, it's such a beautiful, it's a heart film. It's heartfelt. It's a feel-good movie too. It's a combination of so many different things. And like you said, a 21-day shoot, you would never know it because it looks like millions of dollars were spent on this movie. And I know it wasn't, but this movie was made with so much love. It's such a wonderful film, Norbert. You should be very proud of this.
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate that coming from you. Thank you so much.
Well, once again, Give or Take will open in select theaters on February 11th and will arrive on DVD and digital platforms on February 22nd. Thank you, my friend, for dropping by, because I remember seeing you in Rent back then and just following your career too, where it's gone, everything else you've accomplished throughout your career, your ongoing career. You're one of the best guys out there doing what you do, my friend.
You're such a sweetheart.
I will see you soon.
What would we do without you?
I love.
Sid?
Hey, how you doing? Hell of a thing, huh?
Yeah.
In a community so small, the loss is truly shared.
So how long you up for?
Just a couple of days. Just trying to have a little service, get things squared away.
Yeah, how's Ted holding up? Ted's a good dude.
He acts like it's his house and I'm the guest.
Make yourself at home.
I'm gonna it was my father's house. Now it's my house. This is simple.
Well, I guess I should thank you. What? For showing me exactly where I stand in all this.
Mr. Frank expressed his wishes to be cremated.
Yes.
No.
Yes, he did.
didn't.
Yes, he did.
He's got a plot in Havertwood next to my mom.
Well, he changed his mind. Neither one of us wants to be put in the ground.
I just wanted to say how sorry I am for your loss. Kevin was such a sweet man.
Kenneth, you could barely even bother to call him.
I had my life and he had his.
You couldn't stand the fact that your dad was in love with a man, right?
Who are we to decide what they should do?
It's nice in here.
Good to be in a hole sometimes.
You're both my friends, and I'm trying to support both of you.
Oh, my God!
Okay, come on! These are okay!
Simpler times.
And simple people.
Your dad being gone, it's not the end of a life. It's a new beginning, right?
Good job.